These two filmmakers are only 18 years old, and they were able to get over 400,000 views on their recent short film in under 3 months. It's going to be a little bit of a different episode for the Wiseworks podcast today, but we're going to be diving into a conversation with these two filmmaking gentlemen, and their name is Noah and Yuli. They have a YouTube channel called Breathing Films, so if you want to hear them process a little bit about why they believe their film got 400,000 views, as well as hear the story of the filmmaking process for these two young gentlemen, stick around. So the other week I was scrolling on YouTube and I was looking for short films, looking for independent filmmakers, and I came across a short film called Timepiece, and it is currently sitting at 411,000 views. And so I was like, this has got to be like a common thing for this channel. And when I looked at their channel, I was like, oh, this is kind of a new channel. It's a channel called Breathing Films. And as I dug into it, I found out it's a duo of young filmmakers who have created this short film and just have had amazing success. So I thought I wanted to jump on with you guys. I wanted to give you guys some time to explain yourselves, meaning what happened here. Also, I want to talk about your film. I want to talk about all the cool, fun stuff that filmmakers enjoy. So
amazing. Well, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So if you guys wouldn't mind, introduce yourself and how long you guys have been doing filmmaking.
So I'm Noah. We've been making films together for, I think, 7 years now, because we met at secondary school. And we started making films together because our teacher had an animation club and we'd make like little stop frame animations together.
Yeah. And I'm Yuli, and I came along with Noah on this journey of like meeting each other and making films and experimenting and seeing what we liked. But yeah, as Noah said, we met in secondary school and we started out making short, tiny films in after school clubs and stuff like that, and just kind of exploring the world of film and getting into it.
Are you guys like 19 or 20-year-old? How old are you guys?
We're both 18.
18 split apart by 5 days.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. So you guys are both 18 years old. So what kind of, when you guys were getting into production, you were discovering your interest in it, what was like the first type of cameras you were using? Because I remember when I started, I was in like 8th grade and I was shooting on DV tapes. You guys know what those are?
No. What's that?
Caught us out.
You know what a VHS is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's a smaller version of it. So whenever you record, you have to capture it live. So basically you have your camera or a capture device. You put in your small VHS looking, it's called a DV tape, or at least that's what we call it in America. And you put it in and you let it play at real speed, and it's connected through FireWire into the computer, and you have to capture all the footage back. So it just creates one linear video file and you're chopping that up. So what type of equipment did you guys start out with?
How did you edit that? What did you edit on?
I use Premiere Pro, so the Adobe package. And I used an older version of it. Actually, I started technically on this one called Vegas, and then I switched to the Adobe package. I don't know what you guys use, but yeah, I basically, it's all digital. I know, because I started back in 2011 or so. I can't remember how long it was, but it was just, it's like digital existed, but it was still expensive. Right.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And so I wanted to hear what type of cameras did you guys get into? Like, if you guys were so young and you found an interest in this, what grabbed your attention, at least technologically, right?
Yeah, I think the very, very first thing that we both worked on together as a team was actually my cracked screen iPad, maybe 4th generation, with if I can remember the name of this app, I think it's called Stop Motion. It's got like a blue cover. But yeah, it was just an animation app, and we set up our iPad on the desk in our school, and we started messing around with plasticine, snapping frames and creating little videos.
Very nice.
The first series, it was called The Munchkins. Made it with our friend called Rufin, who doesn't do filmmaking anymore. But it was called The Munchkins. It was like this little animated, these little animated plasticine balls that would move around.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from that, we started like then going to live action, and we shot some stuff around Yuli's house with a GoPro.
I think the next progression step was a GoPro on the edge of my longboard, going down hills, chasing us, seeing what crazy angles we could get.
Yeah.
Nice.
All horribly shaky, of course, but
Yeah.
it was progression from
For
the
sure.
iPad.
So you guys had GoPros, iPads. You guys started in animation before you started picking up a camera?
Yeah, I think
Well, the photography was going on.
that
I mean,
as well. Yeah,
I was doing photography. I did photography for quite a long time. I think that actually started with film, to be honest. I think because my dad had an old film camera that he let me use.
yeah. I think it's almost maybe for both of us, it's quite a family led thing. So my mum is also a photographer, so I think we both had parents that were very involved and willing to give us a camera or throw a camera onto us
Very
and say,
nice.
"Go take some photos."
Yeah.
That's
Which
awesome.
maybe was like the spark at the very beginning.
That's awesome. So I wanted to let's talk about Timepiece for a little bit. So you guys are 18 years old. I'm assuming you filmed this since it came out 2 months ago. You guys actually filmed it in 2024, right?
I think
No, so we filmed Timepiece around sort of this time, late 2023,
Okay.
sort of autumn 2023,
Right.
and then it took a long time to edit, and we never really sort of thought much of it, so we didn't like think to post it on YouTube. That wasn't really in our minds.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was more, it started out as a spark of inspiration, then growing into a passion project for the both of us. And of course, we were both in film school in Bristol while this, so we had other projects going on. So it was kind of like a slow burner in the background, kind of editing maybe one session a week, one session every 2 weeks, and then finishing it and then sharing it around. But yeah, we didn't really think much of it at the very end when we finished the edit. So we didn't think to post it for quite a while.
Yeah.
Right. So how long has this film been completed then? Almost a year or a little bit less?
No, it's been slightly less than a year. We shot it. We finished shooting this kind of time last year.
Okay.
And then it took a little while to edit.
Right.
And then it just sort of sat around for a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So I wanted to get your thoughts. So before I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions because around strategy. All right. Because I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues that filmmakers have today, it's not necessarily a lack of resources to learn how to get camera settings looking good, to light a scene, make audio sound good. The biggest problem that filmmakers have today is exposure. Whether that's through online, through film festivals. It's like I've seen so many filmmakers, myself included, post something for free a lot of times on a public platform, and it receives 20 views, and 15 of those were from your friends and family. You know what I mean? So I want to get into what do you both think was the biggest success factor here? But before you answer that question, I want to get your thoughts of what are you currently thinking? Because I checked this film yesterday. It had 400,000. It just broke 400,000. And today it is currently at 411,000. What are you guys thinking about this?
First of all, can I just say it's surreal for us as well. We're at no point were we expecting it to do well or anything.
Yeah, for sure. It's completely out of the blue for us. Very surprising, very humbling that people really, to our assumptions, people really relate with it. And that may be one of the reasons that it's growing. And maybe it's something to do with the fact that even though you're talking about stuff like sound and camera, but your main point is maybe its relation to a film. But yeah, we're absolutely humbled and shocked and very happy that it's gone this far.
And it's kind of hilarious that you guys just kind of piddled with it for a while, thinking there's no expectations for this film. It was just something we had an idea for. We felt right about it. So we'll just finish it when we finish it. If you guys knew it was going to be such a success, would you have had more of a little bit of a kick in your butt to move along the project faster?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of interesting because it started just from being something where we wanted to make a film. We were just really inspired to make a film, and then the fact that it's done well on YouTube is sort of a thing on top of that. It was never like this was meant to be for YouTube. It was just sort of a story that we were inspired and we wanted to make a film, and then it ended up going to that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Also, it's interesting. I haven't really thought that much about why it's been successful.
Okay.
I mean, there was the thing about how a lot of the viewers, this is quite interesting actually.
That's
a large portion of the viewers, when we looked at the demographics on it, quite early on, it was over 50% of the people who'd watched Timepiece were over 65 years old. So we maybe that we sort of accidentally appealed to an older generation, and because we had that sort of niche of people that liked it, that engagement with it might have got the ball rolling early on. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
strange because I think as two quite young people, as filmmakers, we thought that a lot of our viewers would be probably friends and friends of friends, and maybe a bit more than that, but kind of related to our age. But then we looked on the stats. I think it was maybe 20,000, 30,000 views. And it was just like skyrocketing on the older side of things, and like pretty much nothing on our age. Now it's balanced out more. I think it reached a wider.
It's more balanced now, but yeah.
But yeah, at the beginning for sure.
And it's interesting because you do have in the film the contrast between ages. Like you have the young girl and you have the older gentleman, and so I think there's, and in some ways the real emotional pool of this story, I feel like, does speak to older generations of people, right? I've watched your film probably 4 times at this point, and I'm analyzing it, right? Because I'm curious what you guys thought, but I was also trying to understand it myself. So I've been on YouTube for 5 years now. A lot of failures, and so I've learned a lot about why things work, all right? And when I'm looking at your film, this is my perspective. You tell me if you disagree with this. In my perspective, the title is simple, but it's also very clear. I think the reason why there's so much exposure here is because right off the bat, you guys are presenting a cinematically interesting set of B-roll footage. An interesting set of camera angles. It looks good right off the top. The sound mixing with the environment, like the subtle sounds from the street. You know, as soon as the film opens, like people are pulled in and gets them to lean forward when something is quality. And I think the fact that people stuck with it, for like the initial viewers, people stuck with it. It caused the retention to go up and causes the interest in it to grow, which allows YouTube to say, hey, there's an audience here for this. Let's show it to a lot more people. How along the journey in the first couple weeks you posted it, because I guess it's been getting close to 3 months now.
Yes, I think it's just coming up. Yeah.
In the first couple weeks, what was you guys watching the views, or did you just kind of like set it and forget it?
I think we were both watching the views vaguely, because we started it was kind of sitting as an unlisted video on YouTube for a while so that we could put it up on our websites unlisted and stuff like that, and show families and friends. And then we decided to put it public and do a bit of a promo. So we made a poster, threw it on our Instagrams. We both have Instagrams that we usually put our work up onto to bring people to, let's say, YouTube or our websites.
Not much of a following.
Only like I think between us less than 1,000 on Instagram. So we put up these posters. We said, go watch our new film Timepiece. I think most of our followers by then knew that we had been making this film. We'd been pestering them about casting calls, and if anybody knew somebody that could do a sound mix for us, all kinds of little things. So we put it live. And then we were monitoring it. So I think at first it grew quite slowly, maybe 200-300 views in the first few days.
Mhm.
And then it slowly started to increase, which was great to see.
Yeah, I remember. I do remember sort of. I think it hit 20,000 views, and that was like a big moment for us. I remember like telling mum and dad and be like, "Oh, it's hit 20,000 views." They were like, "Oh, that's great."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also it's interesting what you said about the beginning of it maybe being part of the reason, sort of the retention, because you often do see that in YouTube videos where it's like they'll grab your attention at the beginning of the video, with something faster, and then once you get through that, maybe the algorithm supports it,
right.
But yeah, again, that was never really a consideration. It's just sort of that's how the film became. That's what the film just sort of turned into.
I think
guess
it's
that first shot as well. The sort of the pullback.
Yeah, and also like visually. Yeah, first off, very good work on showing and not telling the audience with this film. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Because I love. I could tell it was intentional. You guys didn't try to insert far too much dialogue to communicate too much, or to just, drop a bunch of unnecessary information. You showed what was important. If you're not paying attention, it's the loss of the audience. You know what I mean? You're showing exactly what the story needs, and you do that in the very first opening shot. I mean, you do a great job displaying the setting that the character is going to move through the entire story. So I think there's a level of quality to it. On some level also, your film is an encouragement, because if you guys watch short films on YouTube, I do relatively often. So much of it is very low quality. Part of that is because people are just starting, and so they're uploading their very first film, or they don't have a lot of experience, or they haven't done like a lot of testing, a lot of growth. And so they've put together a short thing and it's not very cinematic, or like nothing's really in focus. There's just like a lot of issues.
Can I add in as well? I feel like a big part of that is the actors that are in it.
Right.
Because we sort of stumbled upon two really, really amazing actors. Because I have seen in some short films on YouTube, like they might look good because a lot of people have good cameras and a lot of people sort of know how to frame things and stuff, but the actors in it aren't great. So we had two actors called Imi and Robin.
Yeah, can we give a big shout out to Imi Simmons and Robin Horden especially? They were a massive part of this film for sure. Like Noah says,
Robin actually, it's a funny story. He's actually he's a playwright.
Okay.
And he's acted in a few feature films back in the 70s. So yeah, he was he was an experienced actor.
How did you guys find him?
I think
we put out
it might have been through a Facebook casting call, just with, I think we even did, it was just when we were starting to look at Mid-Journey AI generated images. I think we just did an AI generated image of like an autumny bench because we didn't have any visuals at that time. We put a title and we said casting call, here's what we're looking for. And I think Robin reached out to us.
He did, yeah. And I remember looking at his website going like, oh wow, he's been in some stuff. But yeah, and then when he sent his self-tape as well, we got him to do a self-tape. And I remember first time I watched the self-tape was with Mum, and we were comparing it to some of the self-tapes of other people that sent, and his was just significantly better. I remember going like, right, this guy's really good. And I remember even on set, he was super, super professional, so great to work with. And yeah, I think that was a big part of making the film feel quality, was just having two really, really good actors.
Yeah. No, his performance definitely blew me away in a big way, because I was like, holy crap, man. These guys are really crushing it as far as their casting. And I was like, they either got lucky or they really did really good research. It sounds like a mix between sort of the two. You guys went
I think we got lucky.
You went out of your way, though, to create an actual casting call, which a lot of filmmakers don't. A lot of filmmakers just pull from people they know, right? Because they're like, oh, I'm getting started. I don't need to find like a real actor here, or even like test actors. Sometimes just like, can you deliver 2 lines? And that's all some indie filmmakers try, especially for early projects. So Yeah, he did incredible. Even the way his eyes moved, like he was just so aware
I know
of how
what
to
you
be
mean.
natural and not to feel like he's acting, which is a real skill. And I was definitely blown away by his performance. Let's just cut in here for a moment so I can give a quick shout out to one of our patrons, Cynthia. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. She supports us for only $3.99 a month. She gets podcasts when they're finished, so she gets them before anybody else. She also gets a daily video over on the Patreon once every day, Monday through Friday. She also gets exclusive clips and longer versions of this podcast episode. I believe there's like 10 or 15 minutes more to this episode than what's released out in the public for free. And if you want to help support this channel through Patreon or YouTube memberships, you get the same content either way you go. You could either join YouTube memberships or go to the link in the description to find the Patreon there, and you can enjoy the content at length. I will say that the Patreon and YouTube memberships is slowly turning into a very beneficial platform for indie filmmakers or film enthusiasts, especially in independent entertainment. So if that interests you, if you're excited about indie filmmaking, if you're excited about entertainment that's outside of the Hollywood system, and if you are yourself an indie filmmaker, well, my Patreon is turning into a wonderful place for you. Let's get back to this fascinating conversation with Noah and Yuli.
One of the large sort of inspiration things with this film was we were at a film festival called Encounters in Bristol.
Yes.
And we watched a film called Old Windows. And I remember leaving the cinema, like, being like really moved by it. Like, it was one of the films that got me close to crying. And it's by two people called Laura Baston and Paul Holbrook. It's actually online. You can watch it.
Okay.
But the reason it was inspiring was because it's set in a cafe and there's a cast of two. And just through the use of really subtle, smart dialogue and just really showing, not telling, it creates a really moving film. And that's sort of half of the inspiration for Timepiece came from the way they made that film. And it was like, oh, right, we can make a film that is set in like minimal locations with a minimal cast and still get across this larger sort of context.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost like on the outside, like it was an inspiration to make a film that appears simple on the outside, but when you watch it, you still get what you'd get from any other film. So I think that's what you're trying to create.
Yeah. Could you give the name of that film again? That was the inspiration?
Old Windows.
Old Windows.
Old Windows by Paul Holbrook and Laura Baston. Funnily enough, Laura Baston and Paul Holbrook, actually, so when I was writing the script, I sent it to them to get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And they both gave some really lovely feedback with the scripts. So they're both really lovely filmmakers from Bristol.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you guys put this film at any festivals, or is it just released to YouTube?
We put it in a few festivals. I think a few of them got rejected. Mm-hmm. What can you do? And a few, I think, are still pending. So hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
I'm curious. What do you guys think of? How have you done the film festival submissions outside of this film in the past?
I think yes, we've done one other film, but was it after Timepiece? Mr. X.
Mr. X was before Timepiece, so that's the animation. So that's an interesting one, right? Because that film did far worse on YouTube, but it got into a festival called Golden Short Film Fest.
To the final selection.
Yeah, but it's interesting because that's sort of a film. I feel like some films are more I don't know, more appeal to film festivals, whereas some are more appeal to YouTube. So in that way, I think Timepiece doesn't appeal to film festivals as much.
Right.
So yeah, we haven't really gotten accepted into any film festivals for Timepiece as of yet.
And with the whole bus stop thing, because you guys got a bus in the film on cue, it moves.
Yeah, that was fun to organize.
Yeah. So did you organize it? Did you have a connection? Was it something you guys just said, go do that and we'll roll? Like how did it all play out?
So it was literally just logistics of like scheduling the day. So all the shots with the buses in. So the bus came, I think, every hour or so. Mm-hmm. So we basically just had to be like, right, okay, bus is coming in 5 minutes now. Okay, let's get this shot that has the bus in. We get him, get to rehearse it a few times, and then so it's basically just like chunk of shooting the actual film, bus shot, chunk of shooting the actual film, bus shot.
The bus ran our shoot. It wasn't us. It was the bus.
Sometimes it has to happen. I mean, seeing it, I was thinking like, oh man, they must have had a connection. They had someone who like works at the bus station or whatever. Like I was like, they had to have had somebody, because it moved, like their scenes, their editing around, everything moved with cue perfectly. And so I was like, they couldn't have just made this happen with a regular bus schedule. It turns out you did, I guess.
Yeah, just a really quiet bus stop.
Yeah, I think it's one of the quietest bus routes in Bristol. But yeah, it looks lovely in that area, and there wasn't many. But yeah.
Now that's the same, like that bus stop is so it's all filmed at the same spot. You guys didn't change locations and use camera angles to make it appear like the same location. Like where the conversation and everything filmed, it was all the same place.
It was all the same bus stop. Yeah. Sort of a funny thing with that as well is we'd been scouting bus stops on Google Earth, and we'd found one, and we thought we liked it. And the bus stop we'd found was actually the next one up from that one. Significantly worse looking. And we went to it and we saw it, and there's like graffiti on it. It didn't look as good as on Google Earth. And we were like,
it was like all neon graffiti of like words and just a mess.
And then we just decided we'll just walk down to the next bus stop.
Just by chance.
By chance, it turned out being like a really beautiful, lovely bench.
That's awesome.
I remember that moment where we were like, oh, we might as well just walk to the next one because it's close. Maybe it's good. And then we turned the corner. And we were like, I think we both looked at each other. We were just like, this is it for sure. With autumn leaves, we were like ready to go.
I feel like that's how production happens most of the time. Is you just have a plan and a vision for it, and then you do so much work prepping for the plan that accomplishes your vision, and then the initial plan never accomplishes your vision, but by chance this other thing right over here does, you know?
Well, do you think, even in like really big budget films, how close do you think the final film is to what the director was envisioning in the beginning?
Yeah,
because I guess the bigger the budget, that you'd expect it to be as close to the director's vision as possible. But
and this is why I think budgets can get bloated, right? Have you guys ever been on a film set of any kind for like Hollywood or anything?
Not Hollywood.
I've been on a couple of BBC dramas, just by doing like running work.
Right.
But, we've both done some experience on some larger sets as runners and camera assistants, but no Hollywood sets yet.
Right. That's I've only been on one. I think I can say what it is. I'm not sure. If I can't, I'll cut it out. So I was recently on set for only one day for the new.
No way.
Because they film it right here in Georgia, right?
Wow.
And I would say I say that because I saw what they were doing, and to answer your question, I don't think it's ever as close to the director's and producer's vision. But the reason budgets are so large is because they manipulate entire scenes to be exactly what they plan for, right? So like I think it minimizes the time wasting by spending more money. So basically, like before actors show up, you guys might have seen this on BBC or whatever environments you've been, or it's also just logical. Before actors show up, it's a lot more expensive once an actor shows up. So do everything you can to eliminate time wasted. So for example, like obviously the waiting on the bus. It's a great option for indie filmmakers. It's not even close to an option for someone who's going to be there for
like wait around for a bus.
right. I think, and so when I saw the scenes that they were filming for that show, I saw that they basically stripped everything down and rebuilt exactly what they wanted. Lighting wise, I saw they covered all the windows. And then they opened up only the windows they wanted, and they didn't have any artificial light. It was all artificial light. It was no natural light. They had these huge RE lights, and they shot so everything was lit exactly the way they want. Yeah. And it was just for like a couple shots they had that, right?
Yeah. So it's so different to indie, that sort of way of filmmaking.
It is, but it all comes down to money too. And in my opinion, I think Hollywood, any kind of large scale production industry, production is going to have to downsize. Because costs are just far too high for what the current audience is rewarding it with. I think a part of that is because indie filmmaking, meaning everything from you and I all the way up to like A24 stuff,
Yeah.
Indie filmmaking is really becoming more popular. And I believe there was a recent study that showed that something like in just America, which I would suspect the UK is far more open to independent film than Americans. In just America, there's something like 77 million people who, in a study recently, who said, or estimation of 77 million, who would be interested in paying for a streaming service for independent films and not just industry films.
Oh, that's great to hear, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And previous to that study, they had estimated it was something like 23 million, right?
Oh.
So it's definitely a lot larger, and I think there's been a movement. I think a part of it is because of YouTube. I think a part of it is because of Hollywood and the industry kind of hurting themselves in some fashion. And also the viewers are just expecting more with not paying as much, right?
What do you think of a film like The Creator?
Mm-hmm. Having John David Washington?
Yeah, because that was all shot on location, wasn't it? That was much less.
Yeah, and they used, I don't know what cameras you guys use, but they used the Sony FX3 for that entire film.
Yeah, incredible.
Which is a $3,500 camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's nothing like a Red or an RE that we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. This is a consumer camera, like a camera that if you have $3,000, you can go get a used one and use it. And it's the same quality as a Hollywood film. And I think, so Gareth Edwards was the director on that, and Greg Fraser was the cinematographer. Mm-hmm. And who else was it? Greg Fraser and Oren Sofer, I believe. So with a film like that I feel like that's, so it's, my brain always works in circles. It's revolutionary because people like Gareth Edwards and Greg Fraser were on it. They were the ones who made the film.
Yes.
It's such an anomaly when it comes to the Hollywood and industry system, because the industry doesn't care about spending money. Like one of the greatest directors right now, Christopher Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
He's still like, he doesn't really, I would assume he doesn't care how big his budget is as long as he doesn't run out of money to do exactly what he wants to do, right? I think that kind of filmmaking is going to be allocated to people that they know can deliver. So people like Christopher Nolan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
But I think go ahead.
It's, like the difference between those two is massive. Like you look at a film like The Creator, and I think for us, but also for everybody who's trying to get anywhere in film, it's inspiring to say, hey, look, these guys can do it.
Yeah.
Now you have no excuse. The only thing that's important is story and connecting with people. Go do it. And I think that inspired us quite a lot.
Yeah. I'm curious. I don't know this, but do you know how the creator was funded? What was the funding structure on that?
Uh, that's a good question. I can look it up, but I know the creator was, what studio did the creator? Was it Universal?
So it was a studio film, but it was just shot in a really different way.
I don't know how it was funded. I do know that originally, I don't know which one of them it was, but either the cinematographer or the director went to all of these places like Indonesia with just their handheld mirrorless camera and
Correct.
almost filmed a pilot of shots. I think you can still find it online.
Yeah.
But almost as a concept pilot for the whole film.
And barely any crew, right?
Yeah.
It was so it was a 20th Century Studios film.
Right.
The budget, so the film grossed 104 million. And let me
Mhm.
see what the does it say what the budget was? I believe the budget was something like 80, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the creator is a good example because it's like one of the most industry indie style films that's been
Yeah.
done recently.
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And a part of that is not necessarily, I don't think a part of that is because they had to. It's more because the creators are interested in that. And that goes back to what we were discussing with, I think the industry is becoming more independent in a lot of ways. A24 was like a pretty not like back, they started in like 2012. So just barely a decade old. And they've made some of the biggest films the past year.
Yeah.
Like the most interesting, biggest films is A24 Studios, right?
Yeah. They seem to be the most interesting. I feel like the image of A24 is like really, especially with people our age. I think when you talk to people and say, "Oh, it's an A24 film," it just instantly has some kind of
It's like art house and different and more independent and wild, I think.
Exactly.
Maybe that's because of the fact that it's a different kind of production or a more wild production than regular.
And I think Hollywood is still like, I think it's like the principle, a large ship is hard to turn fast, you know? And I think the studio setting is so used to like the days of Spielberg and Star Wars and these high budget films with truly creative individuals, truly like impactful artists that were making these movies for the studios. And as of late, I have not seen as many high caliber creators coming out of the studios. And it's dropped in quality in a big way. And independent, not across the board, but in a large way, independent / lower budget projects are kind of filling that hole, you know?
One thing that I found amazing, like recently, is I don't know if you've heard of the new film Red One.
I have heard of it. I have not seen it.
I haven't seen it either, but I heard somewhere that in that film, The Rock got paid 50 million just as an upfront fee, and the budget of the film, I think, was like 200 million, not including marketing So it's probably double that, but The Rock got paid 50 million of that 200 million just to be in the film.
Yeah.
I've heard it's not doing well in like box office or anything.
No, it's definitely not going to be able to make that up. And I feel like we've had example after example after example the past 3 or 4 years. I mean, I kind of take like when, COVID was all over, I kind of take that off as saying like, this could be the reason Hollywood suffered. Post that, where movies are kind of back, we've just seen a fall off of quality, but not a fall off of budget. So they're still paying out, like you're saying, The Rock $50 million to show his face, while not even getting close to earning that back. Another horrible example. Are you guys Star Wars fans by chance?
I can't say that I am, but I have watched a few. I'll say that.
Well, and the whole streaming world brings in more challenges for the Hollywood business model. But The Acolyte was a Star Wars show that came out this year. That thing, if you include marketing, is reportedly sitting at $300 million.
Wow.
And there was 8 episodes, and each episode was only 25 minutes long. So it's not even like a full hour long episodes, like we see from HBO, right? And the writing was garbage. The characters were horrible, and no one liked it.
That's just not gonna. The industry is not going to be able to continue like that if there are lots of these high budget, sort of emotionless sort of films. Because it's sort of almost like, I feel like with that, they're expecting, just because they've got the big cast, the big VFX, that they're going to make the money back. But I don't think that can last. I think there's got to be some more artistic.
It's like a development. I'm actually interested to hear your thoughts, but I was wondering, me and Noah have both been looking at this new thing that's happening. I'm sure everybody's heard of it, AI, right? And how it's affecting the film industry. And obviously, because we're just starting out, we're interested how this new thing that's kind of growing with us will affect us. But yeah, we were looking at it, and maybe like the only conclusion that we can come to is that if it keeps on growing and getting better, the last thing that will matter for the difference between content and a film is story and connection. I was wondering what your thoughts are.
That, and what you're kind of saying is I kind of think of it as like analog storytelling, meaning like, are we doing something with a lot of explosions, with a lot of action that tries to get the big numbers just to earn cash, or are we doing something that speaks to people? And a true artist wants to speak to people, even if they are doing an action flick. So getting into the AI thing, AI is not going to be, it's kind of like, what is that term when you look at something that's supposed to be a human face, but it's not quite there? Like uncanny valley.
Yeah.
The AI storytelling ability for a long time is going to have that, right? There's not, it might be too perfect. It might be too imperfect. There's going to be a level of this very basic human emotion that people receive out of a story. And I think when it comes to filmmaking skill, that is going to be one of the best things to sharpen as far as creators coming up. This is my opinion, because when it comes to animation, when it comes to like camera work, when it comes to our phones can shoot something that's getting closer and closer to cinematic quality with the fake, bokeh, the fake depth of field and everything. It's the skill that's necessary to tell a good visual story is becoming less and less of a barrier to entry. However, the ability to tell an engaging story and to tell a good story with characters that you believe in, right, is going to be the thing that's not going to be able to be replicated.
I totally agree with that, yeah.
Which is why at the top of this, I applauded that you guys were showing and not telling, because I was like, this is like real storytelling, because in one of your shots, I saw more quality of storytelling than I saw out of the entire Star Wars show that this past summer that they spent $300 million to do, right? So I was like, and it's not hard to do. You just have to stop pursuing the cash and start pursuing the story in a lot of ways. And so
I think what you're saying about that shift of the industry to indie is going to allow people to do that more. Because I feel like in the structure of these big budget Star Wars kind of things, it's really tricky for that independent sort of artistic voice to come out. I think if the industry is structured more towards indie filmmaking, I feel like you're going to get more of the real artists being able to put their voice in something without being sort of overshadowed by the money and the budget.
And to bring it full circle back to this, right? Back to your guys' film timepiece that is currently being seen by hundreds of thousands of people. You guys are dang close to 500,000 views. If this thing reaches 1 million, I wouldn't be surprised. This is kind of like the numbers that old Hollywood just wished they could get, you know what I mean? And they would get them because a lot of more people used to go to the theaters. But like an obscure, $12 million film that they would make in like the late 80s, they would wish that 1 million people would watch the film that they made, right? You guys just have almost 500,000 people watching your film as the recording of this. it's not going to necessarily change your lives financially. You know what I mean? But
No.
it is for sure going to cause a lot of decisions and a lot of hope. A lot of people fall off of this game. A lot of people fall off from filmmaking, even if it is their true passion. A lot of people fall off, a lot of indie filmmakers, because it's just difficult. This has potential to cause you to stand up straighter, take yourself in your creative endeavors far more seriously. I know it has for me as well.
Around us. The people around us is like, if you're saying to families and friends, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker,"
Yeah,
having some kind of thing that you can say, "Oh, this film's got this many views," helps a little bit with that, I think, for people looking in. So yeah, that's another part.
What would you both say, maybe individually, is your kind of hopeful long-term goal for being in filmmaking?
You go first.
I think it's a massive question, but I think as I stand right now, I think I have a few things I want to hit. Money right now coming quite low in the list, but I want to be able to use film to change things. As in, film is one of the rare things that humans have been able to create alongside music and others that can change people's minds. It can make people feel things that they never thought they knew. It can change someone's life.
Right.
So I think trying to chase that top goal of being able to be from a completely different country, completely different nationality, but still being able to contact someone, just like what music does, and make them feel something is important.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. Career, was it sort of your goals with filmmaking?
Yeah. What's driving you? What's driving you to spend your extra free time to work on these films as opposed to going, out and hanging out with friends, or even just you two going to do something other than filmmaking? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment, I think a lot of it just comes from the fact that it's really enjoyable. It's one of the things in my life that I just genuinely enjoy doing, like every part of it. And then alongside that, it is the thing of like evoking emotion in another person is so rewarding. I think that's what all art does, but in my life specifically, film is the one that I've put the most time into and I'm the furthest into.
Right.
So I think going down that with that in mind is why I do film. I think is because I enjoy it, but it can also have an impact.
That's great. I got a couple nerdy questions for you guys.
Okay,
Of course.
What camera did you use for this timepiece film?
It was a Sony A7S Mark III, which is sitting right there.
Hey, that's great. The Sony A7S has been used by so many people. Right?
So many people.
Yeah, it's a very popular camera, but there's a reason for that.
Yes.
Why, when you guys uploaded the film on YouTube, you have the option to select a thumbnail or it does auto. Was this an auto selection or was this your guys' selection?
We selected this. I think it was while we were editing it, we knew that was one of the best frames. I think a part of it is it's quite composition. It's quite nice. It's sort of leading lines, centrally framed. It's got the bus in it. It's got Emmy's hair with the leaves.
I think, as an image, it almost defines everything that we want to show people about the film before they watch it. As in, we don't want to show them this mysterious old man because you need to watch the film to discover who he is.
Yeah.
But we want to show our main character. We want to show the setting. We want to show the bus and the bench and the colors and the emotion in it and nothing more.
Yeah, that's good. And I would, besides this image, what was your favorite shot / scene, for this film?
Okay. Yeah, there's two that come to mind for me. One is the first shot of the film, which is the shot of the alarm clock where it says exam tomorrow and it pulls out slowly through all of her sort of stuff all over the desk.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that shot because that was one that sort of came quite early on in the development sort of the idea. That was one that sort of like, we're doing that. That's part of this film. And then the second one that comes to mind is the shot where the old man sort of does his little thing of, I had to go because I ran out of time. And the reason I like that one is just, again, Robin's performance, like really nice. He's got this thing where he looks with his eyes and it sort of pushes in on him. And that one just is nice for me as well.
Yeah.
That was my favorite, by the way.
Yeah.
His performance is that close up where he hesitates, right? He goes to answer and he hesitates and thinks about it for a second longer before he answers. That it's one of the best moments in your film. I do think so.
Thank you. Yeah, it's also one of my favorites, that we're kind of at a similar distance from most of the characters throughout most of it, and then suddenly you hit our peak, the reason that we're making this, and we punch in close to our actor and he's great and you see it all. So that's one of my favorites. And I also really, really like the last shot of the film, interestingly, of the shakiness and the imperfection. And like, you can just see the hint of our actor Imi smiling, and then we cut away. It's gone. But I like the imperfection of that last one.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I want to ask one more nerdy question, and you don't have to. Sometimes people don't like to explain how the sausage gets made, but there's a couple of tracking shots you guys have when she's on the bike. How complex of a setup was that? Because I've done that, just open the back of the car door and sit on the edge of it, or you're like, what was the work to get those tracking shots?
So that was, I think we can spill secrets because it's it's widely done by indie filmmakers worldwide, I think. And that is simply, we didn't have driving licenses at that time because we were both, I think, under, I think we were 17 at that time.
Right.
But that is my dad with me in the back seats through the window with a original Ronin gimbal with the camera on it and some walkie-talkies to shout, go, go, go.
Yeah, Emmy had a walkie-talkie strapped to her trousers, and then I had a little monitor and the walkie-talkie, and like, speed up, sit down, slow down, all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
that's great.
Very indie, but it works.
Sometimes it looks better that way than having like the long, expensive track that takes forever to set up. Sometimes, in my opinion, tracks are better for micro movements. You know, if you're in a scene where you want to push in slowly to something to emphasize tension or to emphasize emotional depth of any sort in any direction, that is better for like dolly tracks, in my opinion. If you're going to do like fast tracking, like, you know, horse riding, bike riding, something like that, it's just get in a car and go. Because honestly, the shocks in the car and everything. And if you have a Ronin, like you guys said you had, you can't really beat it. You know, it'll give you a perfect tracking shot. And I know sometimes those shots can be coveted by, like, a filmmaker who thinks cinematically looks at those shots and is like, oh, I want to do a shot like that. You know what I mean? But sometimes you can become a little blind to the rest of the film because you're focused in on these one shots. That's why I kind of watched it like 4 or 5 times, because my first watch was, I was like, oh, look, cinematography. And so I needed to watch it a few more times to really grasp the story itself. But very good job. I think I had one more question I wanted to ask you both. What would you say was your biggest lesson from this film in particular? For anybody who's a cinematographer, maybe they've done one, or a filmmaker, 1, 2, or about to start their first film, what is a big lesson you would encourage someone with?
Yeah, okay. I've got one that sort of comes to mind. Is sort of like, it sounds a bit cliche, but I guess it's just doing it and sort of starting along the process, because there was plenty of time at the beginning of it where we had the idea, but it was kind of like, do we make it? Do we sort of half, do we go, do we do it? But I think you've just got to make the step and go like, right, I don't really know how this is going to happen. I don't know what I'm doing really, but I'm just going to do it and sort of dive into the deep end. Because I think that's where you actually start learning, when you're actually making things, as opposed to sort of being on the edge and like, should I do it? Should I do it? Just do it. Just do it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, it's like almost every filmmaker that you ask that question will say the same thing. And even people who haven't made films would aspire to that and try and do that as well. But yeah, just even if you think it's a terrible idea or it's going to cost money that you don't necessarily want to spend, but you're really, really ambitious and you want to get this vision onto a screen, is just making it. And even if it's terrible, even if we said like, if it gets one view, but that one person loves it, great. And then also that acting is such an important part. It's key to have actors that understand your film and relate to, and you can work well with.
Right.
But together, hopefully it makes a good film.
Don't skimp on the actors unless they're charging you $50 million.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah.
Right. I really quickly, I wanted to, how did you guys fund this film? Is it something you guys just makeshifted? You guys had to spend some of your own money, or was there an investor? How'd it go?
Well, again, sort of weirdly enough, we never thought about funding. Like even during writing, I was trying to write it in a way that like we could just shoot it. Like it was we never had a budget really. It was just like, if there was a cost, we would just pay it. But I can't really think of many costs.
Realistically, the film, I think we did it for around £400.
I don't think we can put a number on it because I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
but like actual
tickets,
expenses and stuff like that.
Food was cooked by grandma. Cars were driven by parents, so no travel costs. Kit we had access to already. We were hired audio from school, from college. Actors did it for free. No costumes. Actors just wore the clothes they had. No props.
Stole one of our friend's house.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rufin.
So yeah, and that sounds a lot like the budget breakdown of a lot of indie filmmakers. If you could just get it to where it's like, all we have to do is spend the time to go out there and shoot it. Like just hit record on both audio and video, maybe set up a light or two and run, maybe hold up a reflector or some kind of sun shield or something. Like that's as far as we have to go. And that gets films made. And what's cute, what's so incredible about your guys' story with this film is that even with like no money spent, hardly, what equates to almost no money, right? Just a handful of people's time and care. It translates into almost 500,000 views at this point. So it's a huge success. It's a huge success.
Can I also put a bit of credit on that down to Old Windows as well, because that film that I mentioned earlier, when I watched that, it was really like, oh wow, you can tell a really interesting story through being two people in one setting,
right?
And that was like really, and it also helped sort of writing as well, because when you're like, oh, let's write something that you can do that has like an infinite budget, much harder, I think, than writing something where you're like, okay, we're limited to 4 locations, 2 actors, and these are the themes, these are the inspiration. Like, I feel like that's almost easier to write with limitations. So, yeah.
Right. I appreciate your guys' time today. Any other cool stories from the film that I should know about? What did I cover?
Cool story. There you go.
I think
I can shout out our next endeavor.
Oh, please do.
And we're currently in a development of our next film titled Modros.
So we just launched a crowdfunder for that, which we just hit our target for.
Hey,
we're raising
everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're raising we raised 1,500 towards our next film called Modros, set in Cornwall, about 2 18-year-old open water swimmers.
Okay.
And we're hopefully going to be shooting that this winter. So yeah.
Is it going to hit festivals first, or is it going to go on YouTube like this one? What's your plan?
I think we're still kind of deciding, but I think
Festivals first.
Festivals first. We're aiming to try and get to some festivals, try and
Mhm.
explore territory that maybe we haven't hit as much.
All right.
But then, yes, of course, YouTube eventually.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Everyone should keep an eye on your guys' channel. Subscribe to it.
Thank you very much.
It's called Breathing Films, right?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed it is. That's us.
Films. They got some cool
Also,
videos besides. Go ahead.
I've also really been enjoying your channel as well. Since you got in touch, I was having a look through some of your videos.
Well, thank you. It's honestly a lot of nonsense most of the time.
It's
It's really-
entertaining nonsense, so
Can be nonsense a lot of the time, but I try to have fun with it. So thank you guys so much for talking with me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.